2 in a row twice in the regular season. They have yet to lose back-to-back games in this playoff run. The NBA Finals are tied at 1 game apiece.
Mike Breen on the call last night. Oklahoma City evens up the series. But did you read or hear about how game 1 on Thursday night was stolen from the Thunder before Tyrese Halliburton made that game-winning shot? I'll explain coming up here in the opening segment. Good morning, everybody. Mandatory minicamp this week. Still no news, no real news on a contract extension for Terry. Ben will join us later on in the show at 12. Lots of what I would refer to as clickbait trade talk for Terry. Have you seen some of the different, Bleacher Report and some of those other sites putting out, oh, here's the possibility. This from Tim Z. My guy Tim Z writes, Kevin, please tell me they're not going to trade Terry McLaurin because they're unwilling to pay him. No, Tim Z, they're not trading Terry McLaurin. Come on, man. Anything's possible. I mean, we don't know this new group very well. We certainly don't know anything about this new group related to how they'll treat veteran players that are due contract extensions. I mean, the first one that was sort of due a contract extension was Sam Cosmi. They took care of him. He's a much younger player. John Allen, they decided to trade. Yes, I would not put John in the same category as Terry McLaurin. We do know from Adam Peters' history in San Francisco that they do wait these things out. These things happen later on in the summer, sometimes even after training camp starts. So there is some knowledge from how it was handled in San Francisco, even though Adam Peters was not the general manager, in San Francisco. But he was a part of a team and learned from a team that may be something that he's carrying into the situation here. So we'll see. I'm not anywhere near different than I was on Friday or Thursday, and that is on June 9th, I have zero reason to be legitimately concerned about Terry McLaurin, whatever the reports are out there, not getting a deal done, playing his final year of his contract without an extension, or being traded. Between now and the time he signs a contract extension or the regular season begins, the only report that would matter other than something definitive is if Terry actually requested a trade. That would be a blockbuster. We have not had that as of yet. This from Evan. Kevin, you forgot the 83 Skins on the list of teams that are better than Saquon Barkley's 2024 Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah, I mean, the 83 Skins are such an interesting team. The plus 42 turnover margin, all-time record. Nothing's even close to it. An offense that set the record in 1983 for the most points ever in a season. They were virtually unstoppable in 83 offensively. They lost the Super Bowl, though, and they lost it in resounding fashion. I mean, they got absolutely handled by the LA Raiders. Marcus Allen didn't play in the first game in the regular season against Washington, a game in which Washington won at RFK 37-35, one of the great regular season games in franchise history. Michael Haynes had not been traded for at that point. Michael Haynes is certainly in the conversation of the top 3, 4, 5 corners of all time. They had not traded for him, and the Raiders were a different team by the time Washington got to them in the Super Bowl in Tampa, and the game was really not competitive. From rocket screen on, it was a blowout, and they just were the better team. And Washington that year defensively, although they created a lot of takeaways, and they ended up on, again, plus 42. Can you imagine seeing plus 42 at the end of even a 17-game season in terms of turnover margin? Unprecedented. Nobody's ever been close to what Washington's 83 team did. But they weren't good defensively. They got torched defensively. That's why their secondary was called the Pearl Harbor Crew, because they gave up bomb after bomb. Teams scored a lot of points against the 83 Skins. Now, they made up for it by making big plays, and that definitely counts for something. There's no doubt about it. You know, that team went 14-2 during the regular season, had 2 1-point losses. They had a 31-30 opening night loss on Monday Night Football at home against the Cowboys, a game, by the way, that they led big at halftime. And then they had a 48-47 Monday Night Football loss at Lambeau against Lynn Dickey and the Green Bay Packers, where Mark Mosley, by the way, missed a 39-yard field goal at the gun that would have won the game 50-48. That was the highest scoring Monday night game of all time until that game, I don't know, 6 years ago now, between the Rams and the Chiefs, that ended up, I think, 54-51 on Monday Night Football. So there is that. You know, the team, unstoppable offensively throughout the 83 season, set the scoring record, only had 2 losses by a combined 2 points, but they got manhandled in the Super Bowl. And they just weren't a consistent, like, slow the other team down defense. They gave up a lot of yards and a lot of points, but they created a lot of turnovers. Yeah, Evan, I think the 83 Skins, for me, on the list of the greatest Skins teams of all time, that's number 2 for me. 91's 1, 83 is 2. And it's because, God, they were unstoppable. Theismann was the MVP of the league, throwing to Monk, throwing to Charlie Brown, having the, Riggins set the NFL season mark for 24 rushing touchdowns. No one had ever done that. Not Jim Brown, not Walter Payton. The Hogs were dominant. They had guys like Nick Giaquinto coming out of the backfield. Joe Washington, obviously. They were just completely unstoppable. Like, every game was just an up and down the field scoring fest, but they gave up just as much as they got in a lot of those games as well. But I would put the 83 Skins probably ahead of what the 2024 Eagles were, but just barely. It's a tough call because it's hard to put teams that didn't win it all in front of a team that not only won it all, like Philadelphia did last year, but won it the way they won it, which was with arguably the most dominating defensive performance in Super Bowl history. But for me, it's 91 Skins followed by the 83 Skins. Then we can have a debate, 82, 72, 87, in terms of the next best team. The 91 team, sorry to, Doc and Jake and Riggo and Joe T, because 82 and 83 were awesome. 2 NFC championship seasons, 2 Super Bowl trips, and a Lombardi trophy in 82. The 91 team is easily the most complete Redskin team of all time, and it'll go down as one of the top, Super Bowl winning teams, one of the top teams. DVOA, still to this day, ranks the 91 Skins as the greatest team in NFL history. So there you go. All right. I do at some point want to talk about the French Open yesterday. I know tennis talk isn't necessarily a needle mover anywhere in sports talk radio. I did not watch all of it, but I watched enough of it to get a flavor for what turned out to be one of the greatest Grand Slam finals in tennis history. I think we've said that so many times, over the last 15 to 20 years, how many incredible finals did Nadal and Federer and Djokovic and Nadal? And we've just had so many of those over the years in recent years without Americans obviously being involved. But, Alcaraz rallying from 2 sets down, not only 2 sets down, 3 championship championship points in set 4 down to win was an epic for sure. They're still talking about it. 5 hours and 29 minutes. I'll start, though, really with last night's NBA Finals Game 2. And I'll tell you why here in a moment. the Thunder, based on further review, as in the 2-minute referee report, were completely robbed of game one. So last night you saw what you didn't see in game one. You saw the Thunder execute offensively. It wasn't that they turned Indiana over nearly as much as they did in game one. Their defense was still at times suffocating. But unlike 25 turnovers in game one, the Pacers had 15 last night. Unlike the 14 total steals in game one, Oklahoma City did have 10 in game two. But points off of turnovers for Oklahoma City was more of that 1-to-1 advantage. They had 14 points on 15 turnovers. Still not, what their average has been, which is somewhere between a point to a point and a half off of each turnover. Of course, it was dreadful in game one. It was 11 points off of 25 turnovers. But they were able to make turnovers and their defense turn into more offense. But I just thought their offense in general, when they had to run half-court offense, was just much better. And clearly they shot it much better. 49% from the field, 39% from behind the arc. They got to the free throw line and made 29 of 33. I have been saying, going back to the early portion of the second round, that this is the best team. And I think that this team's going to prevail here. Now, game 3 Wednesday night's going to be awesome to watch for sure, because it's a huge game. Like Indiana, I kind of feel like Indiana almost has to get game 3, or it could be, a shorter series, which is what I predicted. But there are a couple of things from last night's game that really stood out, in addition to Oklahoma City just being calmer, smoother, more patient offensively. I love the way they ran the high screen and roll for SGA much higher up on the floor, closer to half court than, say, the 3-point line, in part because once you spread the floor that much, and he splits it with the dribble, or he'll get a good screen and go hard around the defender, even on a switch, there's just so much downhill ability. There's so much space to attack. And he made all of the right decisions last night. I know he had 38 in game one, and I said after game one, I didn't think he played anywhere near his best. Didn't just sort of deal with the game-winning shot, or the shot that would have put him up 3 towards the end that he missed. I just didn't think it was an efficient performance. Last night, he was efficient. He was a great decision maker last night, and still got 34 points on far fewer shot attempts. I mean, basically a third less on the shot attempts. I think he had 30 shot attempts in game one. And he was 11 of 21 last night. He got to the free throw line over and over again. He had 8 assists last night as he, basically made the defense collapse around him. And he had 4 steals defensively. Last night was much different, I thought, for Jalen Williams, although I still think he is, I think he is, he's tight. He's trying to force it too much, but he is their second star, if you will, along with Chet Holmgren. He had a terrible game one. He was better last night. Still wasn't great, though. He's got to be better on the road, Jalen Williams does. But what last night was about, as much as anything for OKC, was 38 points off the bench from Alex Caruso, who got 20, and Aaron Wiggins, off the bench with 18 in 21 minutes. Wiggins was 5 of 8 from behind the arc. So excited to see Aaron Wiggins all season long. He had a 40-point output this year. He went off in a couple of games off the bench. He did. And it's interesting to watch Oklahoma City because their bench is so deep, but it's not always, the guy you expect it to be. I mean, during this postseason, we've seen the other Jalen Williams. We've seen, obviously, Hartenstein wasn't coming off the bench before this series. We've seen Caruso. We've seen Isaiah Joe. We've seen Cason Wallace when he hasn't been in the starting lineup. It can be somebody that didn't even play much in the previous game. Aaron Wiggins has not gotten a whole hell of a lot of run in the postseason. There are a couple of games where he barely even saw the floor. But to be ready like he was for a game 2 that they had to have, he was a massive difference maker. Came out right from the jump, confident, drove the ball, banked one in, and then was super confident shooting the three. Aaron Wiggins was a terrific player on Maryland's 2020 team, which won the Big Ten regular season title, shared in the Big Ten conference title. Okay. I do remember that. For those of you who will remind me via Twitter, if I just say Maryland won the outright Big Ten title, they didn't. They shared in the Big Ten title in 2020. And then we had COVID shut down everything postseason-wise. Wiggins was a significant part of that 2020 Big Ten title team and would have been a big star moving forward with Anthony Cowan and Jalen Stick-Smith in the tournament. He was coming off the bench for a lot of it as well. He was outstanding. Ended up being a second-round pick of OKC in 2021 and has played well. I mean, 26 years old. I mean, it's amazing how fast time flies, but he's in his fourth year. He's already gotten a contract extension, and he averaged 12 points off the bench this year. He was crucial last night. And then one final point on the game last night. You just can't, I'm sorry, you can't call Tyrese Halliburton a superstar when there are too many nights like last night where he's invisible for too much of the game. He was invisible at times in game one. We've seen this from Tyrese Halliburton. Yes, he's going to go down for this postseason as having produced one of the all-time clutch postseasons in NBA playoff history. And the game one shot was big. He had 17 last night, but 12 were in the fourth quarter with the game decided, basically. The difference between last night and Thursday night is the lead was consistently 16 to 23, not 10, not 8 to or 6 to 15. They didn't really have a chance. I mean, I wasn't counting them out because you can't count them out now. But Tyrese Halliburton's had too many of these games, too many of them. I mean, you go back through just this postseason, all right? Game 3 against the Cavs, he had 4 points on just 8 shot attempts. In game 4 against Cleveland, he had just 11 points on 8 shot attempts. He had 8 points on just 7 shot attempts in game 5 against Knicks. The other night, he had 14 and 10 and 6, and he played a well-rounded game. And yeah, the defense is focused on him, but that's where you separate, star players from superstar players. Guys who are in the top 15 to top 20 from guys who are legitimate top 5 guys. He's not that. Even with all of the drama in the postseason he's produced at the end of games, you can't go missing as a scorer in the NBA Finals for 40 of the 48 minutes if you're a true superstar. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander may be, a guy that hasn't closed out games consistently in the postseason. That's true. He's missed some big shots towards the end of games. But as, Rick Carlisle said last night, this guy, you just pencil in for the 30 plus. That's what he's going to get because he's a true superstar. You can't stop him from getting what he wants to get. You can stop Tyrese Halliburton. I think he's a really good player. I think he's a star player, and his clutch factor at the end of games. And I think the Athletic poll that came out earlier in the year where the players voted him the most overrated player in the league, they did, for those of you who didn't know. I think that's a little bit much because I don't think he's overrated. But to try to force him into that category of true elite superstar is way premature. And nights like last night are case in point and proof. You just can't be missing as a scorer for basically 3/4 of the game if you're a true superstar. And that's what he was. He had 5 points going into the fourth quarter, and they were down, 20 or whatever it was at the end of the third quarter. All right, game 3 on Wednesday night back in Indianapolis, and that should be a scene, man. It should be an incredible scene. So I mentioned that something came out after the show on Friday that was quite amazing when you consider the ramifications on game one. I'm shocked that this didn't get more attention. I'll explain it when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show. The Team 980, theteam980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app. And by the way, you can watch us on our YouTube channel.
What kind of resolve did you guys show about yourselves after the first game?
I don't think it's anything more complicated than what I said before. Like, basketball is it's a game of ups and downs. The season's full of ups and downs. A series is full of ups and downs. And it's about the team that can stay level-headed and get better throughout the experiences. We're going to come out on top. And that's our goal, get better through every experience. And we did that last game. We got to repeat for game 3.
That was Shea Alexander, SGA, the MVP of the NBA this year. One of the things that has struck me about watching Oklahoma City during this postseason, and he was on with Scott last night after the game, and he was excellent with Scott. I've yet to see anybody from Oklahoma City interviewed, and they're a very young team, that isn't impressive in that setting as an interview. Chet Holmgren is thoughtful. SGA is. Jalen Williams, incredibly smart and thoughtful. Hartenstein, all Caruso. Aaron Wiggins was on with Scott last night after the game. They're just, I don't know if you've noticed that, Max, or not, but I'm not saying that like I'm super shocked, but you don't always see NBA players, athletes in general, really any sport, be as a team just solid as interviews. All of these guys seem mature beyond their years. That's what I've noticed anyway from afar. Have you noticed that or not?
A little bit. And you can kind of see it. I mean, here, especially for a local tie-in. But like, that's kind of what we've got in Jaden. Like it's just that, that consistency, that not letting the moment get to you type thing. And they're just calm, collected, focused on the next task at hand, and then they take care of it.
All right. Something came out over the weekend. I guess it was late Friday. I didn't see it until probably yesterday, maybe the day before. Game one, if you recall, ended with a possession that Oklahoma City had where SGA missed a shot at the end, up one. Indiana did not call a timeout, and they went down, and Halliburton hit a 18 to 20-foot shot with 0.3 of a second left. What prompted all of that was with 22.1 seconds left, there was sort of a scramble for the ball. It went out of bounds with Pascal Siakam, and I forget who the Oklahoma City player was that was involved in it. And the Pacers challenged the call. They were hoping that either the possession would be overturned and Indiana would be given the ball, or there would be a post, review foul called on Oklahoma City. But none of that stood, and Oklahoma City retained possession of the ball. However, they retained possession of the ball with the wrong amount of time on the shot clock. The shot clock should have completely reset to 24 seconds with 22.1 seconds left on the game clock. But it reset to 14 because in the moment they deemed that there was not a change of possession. Well, the 2-minute report after the game wrote the following. Replay review of the out of bounds called on Siakam pursuant to a coach's challenge was deemed unsuccessful. Siakam gains control of the ball and this is the key. Siakam gains control of the ball and his body touches on the sideline, resulting in an out of bounds violation. Prior to this, there is no foul proximate to the play as Siakam and Wallace come together pursuing the rebound, and the contact is deemed incidental. What they did not add to this was, by describing the play as Siakam gaining control of the ball before he goes out of bounds, that's a total reset of the shot clock. Oklahoma City should have had the ball up one with 24 seconds left on the clock, but really the clock turned off at that point because there were only 22 and a half seconds left in the game, which meant that Indiana would have had they would have needed a steal to regain possession, or they would have had to foul. Now, it's possible that Oklahoma City goes to the free throw line and misses 1 out of 2, and Halliburton hits a shot, and we go to overtime. It's possible they miss both, and they hit a shot and still win 111-110. It's possible that they make both, and Indiana hits a 3 to tie it, and they end up winning the game in overtime. But the Thunder were robbed of a possession that they did not have to shoot during. Amazing to me that more about this was not made a big deal out of before last night's game. Maybe they mentioned it. I didn't see it. I saw a lot of it on social media, but not a lot. There wasn't like a headline anywhere that said Oklahoma City should have had possession of the basketball in game one with the shot clock turned off versus it being at 14 seconds. That's a massive difference maker in a game, clearly. But once Siakam gained control of the ball, meaning Indiana gained control of the ball, which is written in the post-game 2-minute report by the referees, that is a resetting of the shot clock, period. Anyway, I'm going to talk some tennis here for a moment.
It was insane yesterday. I don't know how much you watched, but I was watching since like the second set. So I kind of locked in, and before I knew it, my whole Sunday was gone.
I had a couple of friends of mine who are big into tennis, and I used to be really big into tennis. I love tennis, kind of grew up with tennis, and I just haven't been much of a fan over the last decade or so. My favorite player to watch by far over the last, 20 years, and the matches that I wouldn't miss, the big matches anyway, I found Serena to be the most compelling watch, and I was a huge Serena Williams fan. But anyway, yesterday at Roland Garros, the place in which the French Open takes place in Paris, just outside Paris. I've never been to a French Open. I've been to Roland Garros, though. I've driven by it when I've been in Paris before, and it looks lovely. I would love to go. I've been to Wimbledon, been to the U.S. Open, never been to the French Open. Anyway, in this final men's match, by the way, congrats to Coco Gauff.
Yes.
She won the women's final on Saturday morning. I did watch a lot of that and really rooting hard for her. She became the first American woman, first American to win the French Open in 10 years. The last win for an American woman, we know that the American men haven't won a major in forever. The last major overall was Roddick back in 2003 in the U.S. Open. But anyway, Coco Gauff outlasted Sabalenka in 3 sets to become the first American to win the French Open since Serena did it in 2015. But yesterday, Carlos Alcaraz down 2-0. And I mean, being handled by number one in the world, Jannik Sinner, who, let's face it, Jannik Sinner has a bit of a checkered past here. For those of you, a lot of you probably don't even know who Jannik Sinner is. He's an Italian 23-year-old tennis player who's ranked number 1 currently in the world. He's won 2 majors already in 2024. Last year, he won the Australian Open and he won the U.S. Open. And then he got to his first French Open final last year. But there's been controversy associated with Jannik Sinner's career, including, performance-enhancing drugs, which he was suspended for back in 2023, I believe. And there's been some skepticism over his play. Now, testing is what it is in tennis, and they have missed out on many over the years. But Jannik Sinner has a bit of a sketchy background. With that said, man, does he move well. He really moves well. Ian is a big tennis person. Ian played tennis at Northwestern. Ian would be able to sort of describe Jannik Sinner's game much better than I. But in watching him over the last few years, he really has incredible movement on the court. Anyway, he is dominating Alcaraz on his way to a French Open title. He was up 5-3 in the 4th set after losing the 3rd set and had 3 triple match points in the 4th set, but couldn't get it done. Alcaraz broke back, ended up winning the 4th set in a tiebreaker, and then they went to a 5th set that was crazy. You had Sinner down a break. He broke back. It went to a tiebreaker in the Grand Slam finals. Now the tiebreakers are 10-point tiebreakers. So the first to 10 wins, and Alcaraz blew him out in the tiebreaker. That was really the only part of the match that wasn't great because it was very anticlimactic because he jumped out to a 7-0 lead in the tiebreaker and ended up winning it easily 10-2. So Carlos Alcaraz becomes a 5-time major winner now at just 22 years old. But the match itself was decided in 5 hours and 29 minutes. It's the longest French Open men's final in the Open era and the second longest men's Grand Slam final of all time. Now, I used to love tennis, as I mentioned. I did not commit to 5 hours and 29 minutes. I just can't do that. I mean, I can commit to a 2 hour and 40-minute women's final, 5 hours and 29 minutes, no matter how compelling the drama is. And it is. Tennis, when you get into these exhausting, long match epics where the players are, physically barely hanging on, which was not the case in yesterday's final. But imagine that sort of a final in Flushing Meadow in early September at 94 degrees with ridiculous humidity. We've seen some of those going back to some of those Sampras matches in the 90s where he was throwing up into flower beds. Those were great. But one of the things that I think is interesting about this era of tennis, or maybe the era that just completed, the Nadal, Federer, Djokovic, throw in Murray era, is that it seems like we've had so many of these matches. So I pulled up just a list of some of the great matches. For me, the 1980 Wimbledon final between Bjorg and McEnroe, 18-16 fourth set tiebreaker that McEnroe won to force a fifth set, one of the greatest tiebreakers, one of the most dramatic tiebreakers of all time. He lost 8-6 in the fifth and then came back to beat Borg in the U.S. Open later that year, and then finally won Wimbledon in 81, knocked out Borg in the U.S. Open final in 81, and then Borg at 26 years old shockingly retired. And one of the great rivalries that was still sort of in its infancy was halted before it could ever really grow into what would have been perhaps one of the great sports rivalries of all time. I mean, people still remember Borg-McEnroe as a great rivalry, but it was a very short-lived rivalry. But that, to me, was that Wimbledon final in 1980 was so memorable for me. I just remember how riveting it was, how great the tennis was. Like, these were not, games and tiebreakers decided by errors. They were decided by winners. And that's what people seem to really be grasping to about yesterday's French Open final, as this was not a poorly played, decided by errors kind of a final. It was a 5 hour, 29-minute thriller with one winner after another, and at the most pressure-packed moments. There were incredible rallies. There was incredible drama, edge of the seat kind of stuff throughout. It's hard to have that for 5 hours and 29 minutes, because you can have in these long epic tennis matches a stretch of, it's bad tennis, even though it's close. But man, it seems like we get these all the time. And I went back and just found a list of like the greatest matches of all time. And they're all in like the last 17 years. Nadal beating Federer 9-7 in the fifth at Wimbledon. Djokovic taking out Nadal in 2012 in the Australian Open final, 7-5 in the fifth. The longest match ever played was a Wimbledon match in 2010. Of course, this was before the tiebreaker rule in the fifth set. But John Isner defeated Nicholas Mahut 70-68 in the fifth set. That was spread out over a couple of days, 3 days, in fact. The match in total was 11 plus hours. Nadal's incredible comeback just a few years ago at the Australian Open against Medvedev. The Federer's 16-14 in the fifth in 2009 at Wimbledon over Roddick. I mean, it just seems like a lot of these matches have happened in the last 17 years. And look, this is the greatest tennis era of all time. It's, hard to say that because there hasn't been as much attention paid towards it in this country, because there wasn't an American male, that was winning any of these majors. Since 2003, when Andy Roddick won the U.S. Open, it's just been dominated by Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic. I mean, it's not even close as to the greatest era in the history of men's tennis. Djokovic has 24 majors. Nadal's got 22 majors. Federer's got 20. I mean, the era that preceded their era, the Sampras, Becker, Courier, Agassi era, Sampras had 14. Djokovic has 24. Nadal 22, Federer 20. They have a combined 66 majors. Men's tennis, the greatest era, it's not debatable, is the Nadal-Fed Djokovic era. And who knows, maybe with Alcaraz, we're entering some sort of new era. He's got 5 already at the age of 22. But, yeah, I mean, you go back into the Connors and the Borg and the McEnroe, eras, and you look at their titles, and it's like, McEnroe, as great as he was, and I consider McEnroe to be, in terms of talent, maybe the most gifted player. He only has 7 majors. Now, it's because of the way he took care of himself. He didn't practice. He got into all sorts of shenanigans, in the 80s and then into the 90s. The Lendl, Connors, McEnroe, Borg era was great. Doesn't even come close. It's a fraction of what this last era has produced. Not to mention the women's era with Serena and Venus, et cetera, over the last 18 to 20 plus years. Anyway, I certainly caught the last hour of yesterday's match, and it was thrilling. And Alcaraz is something else, man. He is. Tennis. There you go for 15 minutes. Some rankings are out per Pro Football Focus. We're going to get to the quarterbacks being ranked entering the 2025 season. At 11, Tyler Biadasz, Washington starting center, will be our guest. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com.
All right, the DC Defenders have won the XFL Conference Championship. To advance to the UFL Championship, they will play the Michigan Panthers on Sunday. The Oklahoma City Thunder show off their depth with a commanding 123-107 win over the Pacers to even the series. The Thunder had 5 players score 15 or more points. The Nick Chubb saga continues. He will be paying a visit to the Houston Texans to potentially join Joe Mixon in the backfield. The Packers are releasing two-time Pro Bowl corner Jaire Alexander, and Carlos Alcaraz defeated Yannick Sinner in an epic French Open final that lasted nearly 5.5 hours, the longest since 1982. And the Nats, they fall 4-2 to the Rangers. They're off tonight. They'll take on the Mets tomorrow on 106.7 The Fan. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, and hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1, and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that's what's trending.
All right, this is for those of you, and I don't think the list is very long, that think that Angel Reese has been as much of a draw for the WNBA or has had some level of responsibility for the boom of the WNBA last year. So I completely disagree with that. I think this is one of the easiest things to measure of all time. There's been one person responsible for the increased popularity of the WNBA, one person responsible for a season in which the WNBA finally made money for the first time in 27 years. And that reason, of course, is Caitlin Clark. Well, over the weekend, Chicago was slated to play the Indiana Fever, which they did. But Caitlin Clark's been injured, and she's been out of the Indiana Fever lineup. And the game, which was scheduled for 7 p.m. Local time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday night, had been moved in anticipation of another, Caitlin Clark game, or if you want to bill it, Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese and that continued rivalry. The game had been moved from the Wintrust Arena, which is the Chicago Sky's normal home, to the United Center, where the Bulls play, in anticipation of Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese. The game did, long ago, sell a lot of tickets in advance of this. The tickets on the aftermarket for this game fell to $3. You could get into this game with no Caitlin Clark playing in it for $3. I have a feeling if you walked confidently through the turnstile, smiled and said, "What's up?" to somebody, they probably wouldn't have asked you for your ticket. That's how little demand there was to see a game between the Sky and the Fever with no Caitlin Clark involved. All due respect to Angel Reese, she plays hard. She misses a lot of shots, apparently. I don't watch any of her games, all due respect, because she's plays hard every time I watch her against Caitlin Clark. She's apparently got more rebounds in her career already than points, and she's a hell of a rebounder, sometimes rebounding her own miss 3 to 4 times, Moses Malone style. Yeah, I mean, come on. For those of you still hanging on delusionally to they had 2 superstars enter the league and they're both super responsible, or the rivalry is, no, there's one needle mover, and it's Caitlin Clark. She is the Tiger Woods of the WNBA and has been for a year now. And without her involved in these games, there's zero interest, no matter who else is playing in the game. Not zero interest, but the interest is reduced significantly. All right. So there are a lot of things that came out over the weekend because it is list season, ranking season. The quarterbacks came out. PFF ranked the quarterbacks, tiered them out over the weekend. We will get to that on the show today, I promise you. But Patrick sent me a link to Roto World, part of NBC Sports, I believe, ranking the NFL general managers heading into 2025. So where was Adam Peters? Where was Let Him Cook? Adam Peters. Where was playing chess, everybody else playing checkers? Adam Peters on this list. It's a list. It's an opinion. We understand that, but it's nice to just kind of see and read from some of these over the weekend. So Howie Roseman was number 1. Andy Reid, Brett Veach combo in Kansas City was number 2. Les Snead, Sean McVay combo in L.A., number 3. Eric DeCosta in Baltimore, 4. Brian Gutekunst, Green Bay, 5. Brad Holmes, Detroit, 6. Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, 7. San Francisco. This is where about you'd start to think about seeing Adam Peters, right? No. Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott, Buffalo, John Schneider in Seattle, 9. And Jason Licht in Tampa Bay, 10. So Patrick wrote, Kevin, don't you think Peters deserves to be among the top 10 general managers in the NFL? I can name 3 from this list that he should be ahead of based on what he's done in the year and a half. And he listed Schneider, he listed Shanahan, Lynch, and he listed actually Brad Holmes as 3 that he thought. Look, I'm not going to get into which he should be ahead of and which he shouldn't be. But I have no problem at this point with Adam Peters not being on a top 10 general manager list. People, Jaden Daniels was selected number 2 overall, and sure, he could have picked Drake May. He could have gone J.J. McCarthy. Many of you wanted to see May or McCarthy. Many of you wanted to trade back, and not to select a young quarterback. But he made the right selection. He did, clearly, in Jaden Daniels. And getting that right has masked anything that may have been questionable during the year and a half. Look, overall, I think Adam Peters and his front office have done a terrific job. And it starts with, getting the right head coach. Let's not forget that. That's a big part of what Adam Peters was tasked with. He needed to find the right head coach. And I think even after one season, I don't think we're ever going to look back on the selection of Dan Quinn and then the associated staff that he brought with him and say that that was really a bad decision. I guess the quarterback could get injured and they could go 6-11 and then 7-10 with another injury. I mean, it's football. Things happen. But that's pretty much what it would take for them not to be a competitive team for the next few years. I mean, in many ways, they're basically 2 moves Adam Peters has made that just are so far and ahead more important than all of the others added up together. And that is right head coach and the right move at number 2 in his first draft, getting and landing on the best quarterback. But, Daniels was largely responsible for 12-5, 2 road playoff wins, and the first NFC Championship appearance since 1991. Right now, there are certain picks and there are certain trades that are very much TBD. Wouldn't you say the Marshawn Lattimore trade at this point is TBD? I would. Wouldn't you say that the selections or the trade back with Philadelphia, where Philadelphia got Cooper DeJean and Washington got Sanderstil and Sinnott, don't you think that's kind of a TBD at this point? I mean, Sinnott needs to be a guy that really produces, because DeJean and Sanderstil both had tremendous rookie seasons. By the way, I read something the other day that said that the Eagles are considering moving Cooper DeJean to safety. He's just a football player, as Scott McLaurin would say. And I love Sanderstil, don't get me wrong. Sanderstil has a chance to be a great player as well. But, there are still some questions out there. By the way, you know where he was ranked? 11th. That's not bad. That seems right. One season, getting Jaden at the top of a draft with number 2, a pick that I think 3/4 of the league would have made in that situation. I like some of the things he's done. I think we're going to love the Tunsil trade. I think there's a chance we're going to love the Debo trade. But the Lattimore trade is still questionable. The not adding, more to the defensive front from certainly a pass rushing standpoint seems a little bit questionable right now. You can't do everything, understood, but he was 11th. That seems right to me. I mean, I guess, going down the top 10, I mean, Howie Roseman has clearly been, we don't need the Jahan Dotson trade. It certainly looks like Washington won that trade. Okay, but Philadelphia may have won the draft day trade in 2024. But, Philly and Kansas City and what LA's been doing, what Baltimore always does, Gutekunst and the way, the whole Rodgers thing was handled, that was a little bit, odd. I think Brad Holmes, they've done an excellent job in Detroit. Look, Detroit's injuries killed them more than anything else. Their injuries to their defense last year is what really derailed them. Lynch and Shanahan have been largely hits over misses, even though some of the misses have been big. The job Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane have done in Buffalo has been outstanding. Schneider's always been one of the best. Jason Licht has done a phenomenal job, including, coaching staffs and OC hires. Nothing wrong with Adam Peters being 11th on this list after one season in which the number one runaway reason for their success on the field was one draft choice, number 2 overall, Jaden Daniels. And again, let me emphasize, I do get it. I know that some of you people out there didn't want them to draft Jaden Daniels. I would say, it was kind of a third thought that, a trade back and build it up and go to the quarterback store in 2 or 3 years and just pluck one out of the store, which a lot of you were very much in favor of. And I say a lot of you, about a third. I think a third, we're into other quarterbacks. If it can't be Caleb, then let's trade back. Or if it's Caleb 1, let's go J.J. McCarthy. Let's go. A lot of you were into Drake May. And by the way, those quarterbacks are super talented too. And then I would say certainly a third to 40% were, by the time we got to the draft, we're all on board with Jaden. But that was a process to get up to 40 to 50% by draft day in favor of the pick. Because I had to deal, and all of us had to deal with the trade back idea. Whew. Thank God they didn't do that. And then again, thank God they didn't trade for Deshaun Watson when I wanted them to trade for Deshaun Watson back in 2022. Tyler Biadasz will be my guest next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. Joining me right now is Washington's starting center, Tyler Biadasz. Later on this afternoon out in Loudoun County, Tyler is teaming up with Mercy Chefs to give out 500 backpacks filled with food to students at Guilford Elementary School and Sterling Middle School. More on that coming up here shortly. But, I've had you on the show before, and I was just thinking as I was waiting for you to call in, when you do these, and I'm not talking the run-of-the-mill post-game or, the week of a game, but in the off-season, when you get asked to do interviews, what percentage of the questions are about Jaden?
Well, it all depends. It really does depend. I mean, depending on how and what you're asking, but
no, but you know what I'm saying. Like, you're the center. There's this, understanding among football fans that there's a relationship that's, typically very close between center and quarterback. And given the year that he had, I would bet you get asked a lot about him because I'm about to ask about him. But I was just curious as to how much, ends up being about Jaden. What are the big differences with Jaden coming into year two?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Jaden, he sets the tone, and, obviously, he's a leader by example, but also his voice and how he sets the tone each and every day. And you can see the improvements that he's put on, whether it be, getting in the weight room, film session, coming in early, getting walkthroughs done early before, a lot of people are already in the building. So, I mean, the biggest part for him, I think, is just his approach to it and staying consistency and just finding those edges, and that's part of the game too, is just finding like how exactly can you get better, each and every day, whether it be 1% and just keep on stacking days. And he's making tremendous strides, and we're always excited for him. But also it just puts more ownership on us. Obviously, you're speaking to the center, so putting more pressure on us in regards to making sure we have a clean pocket so he doesn't have to run around too much in regards to that. But I mean, he has a great approach to it and a great attitude each and every day. So, obviously blessed and super grateful to have him, doing leadership and everything too.
Is he different physically? Has he gotten bigger and stronger? Because there was that, photo circulating around the internet about a week and a half ago, and everybody thought he looked like, a little bit stronger at the very least. What do you say?
I think he's definitely stronger. I mean, for sure. Obviously, physically and mentally. I mean, just his approach to it. You can see it in his demeanor each and every day, and just the attitude of just attacking. Whether we're doing a walkthrough, him doing his reads, or whether we're in a practice, running through, or whatever it is, he's going hard, and he's putting like max effort in each and everything he's doing. So, like I said before, you can't say enough great things about him.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk to you about the differences between year one and year two in a new regime. Last year, new coaching staff, new roster for all intents and purposes. And the results were incredible, clearly, for a year one. But I think many have a sense from the outside looking in that when you change as much as this organization did last year, sometimes it takes time. Even though it didn't appear to need much last year. But can you speak to the differences between, last year and this year at this time?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, year one to year two, there's a lot of different, modalities in the whole thing. I mean, obviously, year one, you're coming into the new offense, as a group too, obviously, coming with a new head owner, GM, head coach, offensive coaches, everything. A lot of guys coming in free agency, like myself. But going into year two, it's also really good too, because we have a lot of chemistry coming forth, and you have a lot of that same mentality of scheme coming from the year before. So there's a lot of obviously differences, but there's so much continuity and chemistry, and obviously the bonding throughout the last how many months we were together this last season, 8 to 9 months. So I mean, there's a lot of great things obviously coming up from year two, and you get to work on a lot of the improvements, and you work on to maintain your strengths in regards of the scheme, or whether that's run, play action, pass pro, whatever it is. But that's obviously my position. But yeah, definitely looking forward to the whole thing.
The reputation of this organization, Tyler, has changed so much over the last 12 to 14 months. You were in Dallas. You understood what Washington was before you came here. But now, there's this vibe, this culture vibe that everybody thinks it is now one of the most desirable places in the league to play. What does that mean specifically when you're a player and you look at a place and you say, yeah, I'd play there?
Yeah, I think it comes from the top down. Obviously our owner Josh Harris and GM AP and Coach DQ. I mean, we've had a great coaching staff to give us obviously the resources, but having a precise plan exactly what they want out of us. And like how DQ said before, we're hunters, man. We go for it. And the bottom line is what we put on film. That's who we are. So obviously desirable place in regards of how we get after it, how it gets down on the field. So I think a lot of the film, does the talking for that. But in regards of, how we, set the tone and how we play the game, I think that speaks for itself.
What are your early impressions of Josh Connerly Jr.?
I think it's going to be, I think he's really great. I think he's doing really good. His approach is very, he has a lot of talent, and this spring it's great. Since he's been here, he's made tremendous strides in regards of run game and pass pro. And this is awesome. We have our OTA practices and we have our mini camp coming up, but just obviously a rookie coming in, just getting into the speed of the game. Obviously college and NFL is a little bit different in regards of that.
I know he hasn't been at OTAs, but do you have a sense of what Laramie Tunsil's going to bring to the offensive line?
Obviously what he's done, right? I mean, he has a great, approach to it, super professional in regards of how he takes care of his craft and just what he's put on film. I mean, his demeanor and his immediate presence in regards of run game and pass pro. So I'm really excited about it.
So, Tyler, this time of year, when we're still a few months away from games and the draft is in the rear view, along with most of free agency, you get what I call list and ranking season, where you have a lot of opinion pieces or analytics, rankings of position groups or wide receiver duos or whatever it is. And I'm just curious, do you pay attention to any of that, like where you would be ranked in a given, analytics ranking of the position? There are only 32 starting centers. Do you pay attention to any of that stuff?
Not particularly. I mean, you always want to keep getting better each and everything, but obviously, you want to stay as much as media is a part of our sport. You want to stay outside of that.
Do you care or pay attention at all to things like PFF grades on, how you played in a particular game, as an example?
I don't really have a comment on that.
You know what I'm talking about, Pro Football Focus.
Sure.
Yeah. So is your lack of commenting on it because you don't think that they know what they're doing, or is it because they're a big client of the NFL and I think all 32 teams, and there'd be some sort of conflict of, interest or something like that?
No, I mean, honestly, I just really don't know how that's all graded down. Obviously, I don't think it's graded in regards of each and every team. I don't know who really is grading it.
Right.
Do you?
I don't, you know what? I think I know one of the guys that grades, our team, your team. But I don't know how they do it either. I don't.
I mean, you have respect for some of that stuff. It's more so how we're getting coached and what's the scheme in regards to that and how it's all getting graded down. But at the same time, the success that we have and the scheme and how we approach the game, it's internal. It's in here. It's in our facility. It's through the coaches and players. Sometimes it's not always about PFF, and sometimes you're told to do different things, and how are you supposed to really look at that
right.
in regards of how is it get graded? But I don't really pay attention to too much of that stuff. So.
It's always been to me, Tyler, baseball, every single thing that happens in baseball is measurable. In football, with 22 players on the field at the same time, when the grader doesn't even know what the player's responsibility on a given play is, it just makes it much more difficult to grade. And I think your positions in particular, the offensive line, is very hard to grade. That would be my view on it. I don't know if you have a comment on that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I'm not really sure.
All right. What'd you think about the schedule?
We play who we play.
I know, but it got all the primetime games, the attention paid on Washington. You were used to it in Dallas with all the primetime games, but I'm just curious if other than you play who you play, did anything else stand out?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I noticed like the primetime games. We're playing more like night games for sure, but like. It's like each and every other year in regards of like you're playing a different division outside of your own.
Right.
Like we're playing the North this year. But like in regards of like the schedule, I mean, obviously like prime time is always fun to play under the lights for sure. In that regard, and but no, I mean, obviously each and every year it's always a blessing to be able to be healthy and to go out and play the game you love. So. That's kind of why I say, we play who we play, because it's always super, super grateful just to have that opportunity each and every year.
All right, one more, and then we'll get to what you're doing on Monday. I know it's early. I mean, it's June 6th. But is there a player that you have a gut feel, and maybe you and other players out there have a gut feel is going to surprise people through the rest of the summer and then into the season? Maybe a player that, we fans aren't thinking about?
No, I mean, I mean, obviously we made some, additions, obviously in regards to my position for like offensive line, but no, I'm excited for like Josh. I mean, he's coming in hot, he's coming in, full head of steam. So, I mean, obviously super excited for him, but also like, we had some position changes too with Brandon Coleman at left guard and obviously bringing in LT, and Laramie at left tackle. So, I'm just really excited just to see how we gel. In regards of like, obviously you have OTA practices and mini camp coming up right now. And, obviously when we put the pads on, I think it's July going into camp. I'm just super excited about that opportunity because obviously you're talking to an old lineman, but, in regards of like, our offense, obviously getting additions, like Debo and just having him and his skill set, on display and, getting guys back that were kind of banged up last year. Like Noah Brown, and even getting guys like Michael Gallup too for additionals too.
All right, let's finish up with what you're going to be doing Monday with Mercy Chefs. Tell us about it.
Yeah, we partnered up with Mercy Chefs. Obviously in regards of food insecurities, we're going to fill 500 backpacks with Loudoun County students, sending them home with some food. And we're super excited and grateful to be a part of the community with my foundation. And Mercy Chefs has been a great partner that I've used in the last, 2 years. So just really, really super excited to get out in the community and just, spread that awareness.
Yeah, it's going to be great later on this afternoon. Sterling Middle School, Sterling, Virginia, from 3 to 4 p.m. Tyler and his foundation teaming up with Virginia-based disaster relief and humanitarian aid organization Mercy Chefs to give out 500 backpacks filled with food to students from Guilford Elementary School and Sterling Middle School. Best of luck later on today, Tyler. Really appreciate you doing this.
I really appreciate it, Kevin. Thank you.
Tyler Biadasz, everybody. Mini camp underway tomorrow, 3 days of scheduled mini camp. And, of course, the story going into that will be Terry McLaurin. Ben Standig will join us at 12 to talk about that. Over the weekend, not a shocker, but Caps coach Spencer Carberry won the Jack Adams Award given annually to the Coach of the Year in the NHL. Tarek El-Bashir will join us next. We'll talk to him about that. And, by the way, an incredible start to the Stanley Cup Finals. We've had an overtime game and a double overtime game. Game 3 set for tonight. So over the weekend, Spencer Carberry became the NHL Coach of the Year, winning the Jack Adams Award. I don't think it's that much of a shocker. Meantime, we have a phenomenal Stanley Cup Finals going on. Game 1 was decided in overtime, late in overtime. Game 2, both of which were out in Edmonton, decided in double overtime. Florida and Edmonton now knotted at a game apiece, with Game 3 tonight back in South Florida. In what has been a very compelling series. Joining us right now to talk about Spencer Carberry, the Caps, and a little bit about Stanley Cup Finals is our good friend Tarek El-Bashir with Monumental Sports. You can follow Tarek on X, on Twitter at Tarek_El-Bashir. So this wasn't that much of a surprise, right? I think that he was certainly the front runner once the regular season ended, but just give us a sense of A, your reaction to it, and then B, how impressive he's been here in 2 years as the Caps head coach.
Yeah, Kevin, I don't think anyone was surprised that Coach Carberry won the Jack Adams trophy. I think he was the leader at the end of the regular season, as good as Scott Arniel did. There's some other guys, Dean Evison and Marty St. Louis all did really well with their teams. That said, I think what put Spencer over the top, at least from my vantage point, is the fact that he integrated so many new players, right? The team totally reinvented itself last offseason, and adding 7 new players. And then you look at the metrics and the analytics and the numbers, and you see the massive jump team made from last year to this year. And I think it was a slam dunk that Carberry was going to win Coach of the Year. And the thing that's so impressive to me, Kevin, is the fact that he's now won it in all 3 major professional hockey leagues in North America, right? He won it with the Hershey Bears, and he also won Coach of the Year with the ECHL South Carolina Stingrays. He's the first guy to ever do that. So I think that just really speaks to how good a coach he is, and the fact that he put in his time and he's excelled at every single level. And you look at the guys who have success at the highest level, most of them paid their dues at the lower rungs, and Spencer did it the right way, and congratulations to him.
I want to ask you a question just about his future. He signed a 4-year deal. He's coached 2 of those 4 years. Is it typical after something like this in the NHL for, strong ownership to look at extending his deal before we get up on the last 2 years of it?
Kevin, that's a great question. And I was wondering that the other day when I was trying to figure out how big of a bonus he got for winning Coach of the Year. Because I'm sure his agent wrote in a clause into his current contract that says, Stanley Cup, Eastern Conference Final, and usually Coach of the Year all carry with it massive bonuses. That said, coaching in the NHL is a very short-lived thing. I want to say the average is like a little over 2 years. It's not very long. So I feel like typically we don't see coaches get extended with 2 years left remaining on their contract. We see it a lot with coaches going into their final year because no one wants to be a lame duck, especially when you're a team like the Capitals that has right now they have a lot of players signed long-term. And you want those players in the back of their mind to know, you know what? This coach is going to be here for a while too. I better listen and do what he says. You always want that to be the situation. You never want your coach to be a lame duck. That usually doesn't work out very well. That said, you don't see in the NHL coaches get extended with 2 years remaining the way you do in, let's say, the NFL. I feel like it happens a lot in the NFL, and it certainly happens a lot at the highest rungs of the NCAA. So I'd be surprised, quite frankly, if he were extended, in the next few months. I don't have any inside information on that. I would think that if he has another good year next year, then next summer will be a time when discussion will pick up and maybe you want to lock him up long term. I mean, you look at the success he's had in his first 2 years, and you look at his age, and you look at just how everyone
it's his age, Tarek, that makes it interesting to me, because haven't they basically had I mean, Trotz, Laviolette. I mean, these were older guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, if you're asking me right now, would I lock it? Absolutely. That said, I mean, again, the history of coaching is, very few coaches stay in the same place for a long time. But I will also say this. Of all the coaches that I've covered here over the past 2 decades, Spencer is one of those guys, kind of like Boudreau. I felt that way with Boudreau, who might have a really long run here, just simply because of the success he's had right off the bat. Again, 42 years old, he's young. He embraces kind of the cutting edge analytics and understands the salary cap and just all the things that you want in a coach right now. He checks all those boxes. So I would be willing to bet right now, after 2 years, regardless of what his contract says, he's going to be here for a long time.
What's his number one attribute?
I would say communication. And again, I've covered this team for a long time. They've had a lot of really good coaches. And I have had players in the past who've come to me with gripes. Everyone who's not on the power play, on the penalty kill, playing 20 minutes a night, somewhere they aren't happy with their playing time or something about what's going on with regard to play time and other things. And a lot of times, or not to say a lot of times, sometimes the player doesn't really know why they're not getting opportunities or what they need to fix in order to get more playing time, in order to be on the power play. And if you look at Spencer's track record here in these 2 years, I feel like he does a great job of letting players know where they stand. That's all a player really wants to know. They want to know where they stand. And if you look at the number of players who had career years last year, young players, I'm talking about Connor McMichael, I'm talking about Alexei Protas, Marty Faravari before his injury. I mean, these are guys who took leaps forward. This wasn't because they were just older and more experienced. This is because they had a connection with a coach who was able to clearly communicate expectations. Also, here are the ways inside of your game you can get better and play more for me. And I haven't heard a single gripe behind the scenes about a player going, I don't know why I was out of the lineup. I don't know what he's looking for. I don't know why that guy's playing more than I am. Guys know where they stand with this coach. And again, I've already said it, but that's really all a professional athlete wants to know is where do I stand? Why am I not playing? How do I get more playing time? And what do you want from me, coach? Is the bottom line. And guys on this team, they always know what the coach wants from them, what the expectations are, and how to continue growing their game.
We're talking to Tarek El-Bashir, Spencer Carberry named NHL Coach of the Year. So just kind of looking back, it's been a few weeks since they were eliminated by Carolina. Seeing what Florida did to Carolina, did that sort of hammer home the point that many of you guys made before the postseason began, which was one of the reasons the odds makers don't love Washington are teams like Florida and even Toronto. Would Washington have had any chance against Florida?
It's hard to say, but I will say this, Kevin. I feel like watching the Florida-Carolina series, Florida just looked like a better version of Carolina. If the Caps couldn't handle Carolina, I don't know how it would have gone against the Panthers, but probably not well. That said, I think the Caps should be heartened by the fact that they took another step this year.
Yeah.
They went from a first-round sweep against the Rangers to a team that got to the second round and, made the Hurricanes sweat a little bit, right? I feel like it also underscored, this is, I haven't talked to Chris Patrick in a little bit, but I think it also underscored to the decision makers that there's more work to be done. Like a lot of this team is coming back intact next year by the way, the way the contracts are set up. A lot of guys are signed. That said, they're going to have cap space. And now, having watched the Eastern Conference Final, I think they can identify the areas where they need to get better. Because I asked this question on Breakdown Day, and it's something that's still kind of in the back of my mind, and that is, does this team need to kind of hurricane-proof itself, or build its roster knowing that they're probably going to have to go through Carolina or Florida to get where they want to go, right? You don't want to galaxy brain it and totally make big wholesale changes thinking, we got to do this just in case we run into the Kings again. That said, you saw what they did to them. And you saw where the areas where the Capitals were weak. They struggled to break the forecheck. They struggled to get the puck going in the right direction under heavy forecheck. There were areas where the Capitals need to get better. And I think that what they saw in that second round is going to be instructive to how they shape the team this offseason. Now, Kevin, we're not going to see massive changes like we saw last year. 7 new players last year, a lot of big trades. I don't think that's going to be in the cards. I think it's going to be more targeted to certain positions where they know that they need to get better, they need to get deeper. And I like where this Capitals team is right now. For a long time, we've talked about this. I was worried that as Ovi aged and was getting close to calling it a career, there was going to be a long, cold winter on the other side of the Ovi era. I think you can safely say, whatever Ovi decides after next season, you can safely say this team has well positioned itself to have some success for a number of years after that.
There was that announcement a couple of weeks ago about, from, I think, sales that this was going to be Alex Ovechkin's final year. And apparently it was not necessarily, to be honest with you, I personally, as a customer, and I'm not a massive Caps guy, as you know, but I would certainly understand the positioning of 2025, 2026 as, maybe one of your final opportunities to come out and see Alex Ovechkin play, because we are getting down to the final opportunities, absolutely. Whether it's this, but do we know anything about for legit what his plans are?
I mean, I just know what he has told us. And he has told us he intends to come back to fulfill his contract next year. He's on the books for one more year at $9.5 million. That's a lot of OB juniors. That's another 3 generations of OB juniors that never have to work again. Don't have to worry about working, right? That's a lot of money. That said, Alex doesn't play for money. If you look at the way this team is built, they were so gutted the fact they had much higher aspirations this year. This team is coming back next year, Kevin, almost identical to the way it is now. And they're going to have cap space this summer to make some key additions. This team, in theory, should be better next year. Alex wants to win another Stanley Cup. He's got one more year in his contract, and I would say, he'll be 40 years old next year. I would say if next year into the Stanley Cup, yeah, I could see him just blow a kiss and say, "I'll see y'all later." Yeah. If they make another run, does he do a Jaire and sign 1-year deals and kind of like see what's going on and sign right before training camp? I don't know the answer to that. I will say this: you look at his numbers last year. He had a broken leg. He still scored more than 40 goals, right? At 39 and a half years old. He is still a valuable player in this league. I think if you're the Capitals, you let him kind of dictate. He's got one more year in his contract. He's going to be 40 years old on September 17th. I think you let things play out next year, and then I think some conversations have to be had. How do you feel? Do you want to go back to Russia and maybe play a year in the KHL and then move on with your life, or do you want to maybe see if you can take another run with the Caps? I think it's all on the table. If I had to guess, he will allow next year to play out and then make a decision and then make a call based on what's best for him, what's best for his family, and what's best for the team.
By the way, there's going to be a significant thing to market early in the season when we're talking about October and November, and that is the chase for 900. That's a big deal.
Absolutely. 900 is a big deal. Also, and Obi's never said this, but I think I know him well enough that he always wants to be the best. That's always what's driven him. I don't think anyone's going to catch him, but no one thought anyone was going to catch Wayne Gretzky either. I think he wants to put as much distance between himself and Leon Draisaitl and Austin Matthews and Connor McDavid to make sure those cats never never catch up to him, right? And if he scored 44 goals last year, who's to say he can't approach that number again next year, or let's say in the 30s and get to 928? You get into the upper, you get into the over 920 goals, and man, I'd have a tough time, Kevin, ever saying that one of those guys that I mentioned, Matthews, Draisaitl, McDavid, those are the guys who kind of jump out as maybe having a chance because they're in their late 20s. Those guys would have to play into their 40s to even get close. So I think Obi really wants to be the goal king for forever, and another good year, and I don't think anyone's ever going to approach him.
All right, let's talk real quickly before I let you run. I mean, unbelievable games in Game 1 and Game 2. I watched a lot of the overtime portions. There should be some app, by the way, that you can download that lets you know when an NHL playoff game has gone to overtime, because that's thrilling to watch. It's a great watch.
Kevin, there is, man.
Seriously?
The ESPN app always dings me whenever the game goes to overtime. And I'm always watching anyway, but yeah, I definitely get a ding.
I mean, even if you're not a hockey person, if you're a sports fan, the drama of sudden death overtime playoff hockey is awesome. So we've seen in overtime and in 2 overtimes. Let me just mention one thing to you, because I'm not a hockey guy, but I do recognize like when somebody is truly different than the others. And in watching just periodically some of Edmonton's games, late at night, during the playoffs and over the last couple of games in the Stanley Cup finals, he's different from everybody else out on the ice. I'm just curious, how great is he compared to other greats in terms of just gifts, talent? I'm not talking about production at this point, but where is his talent compared to the, some of the all-time greatest players?
Kevin, I want to go roll back for a second to what you said before, and that's like one of the main tenets of scouting at any level, right? Is who stands out, who just looks different than anyone else. Go back to like Obi's first few years in the league. If you took someone who had never heard of the game ice hockey and put them in Capital One Arena, let them watch a few minutes and said, who looks different? They'd go, number 8 looks different than everyone else on the ice. Number 97 on Edmonton looks different than everyone else on the ice. And it's a combination of a lot of things. Number 1, for me, it's skating. His edge work, his ability to change directions, his flat-out speed. There are guys in the league who are really fast when they don't have the puck. But when they do have the puck, they slow down 5, 10, 15% because they're stick handling. There's other things going on in their brain. Connor McDavid skates the same speed with or without the puck. Some would say he actually accelerates when he's got the puck on his stick. And that makes him so dangerous. I mean, if you watch him when he gets the puck, let's say he's streaking across the neutral zone, gets a pass, you can see the fear and the hesitation in the eyes of the defender as they're pivoting to go backwards. You can almost read the thought bubble over it's like, oh God, he's got the puck and it's just me between him and the goalie. I mean, it is unbelievable. His stick skill off the charts. The pass he made to Draisaitl the other night where he toe dragged again at full speed and then made another kind of quick juke and then dished the puck right onto the tape of his teammate. I mean, I don't know how many other guys, maybe Sidney Crosby in the height of Crosby, he could do something like that, but he wasn't that fast and he wasn't that slippery. But I mean, that would be my best comparison. I mean, Nicholas Backstrom for a couple of years there was Houdini as well, but I mean, I don't know if anyone can compare to the raw skill and the breakneck speed that McDavid plays with.
There was a goal in an overtime game. I think it was against Vegas in this postseason. And it may have been for Draisaitl as well, where it was an Allen Iverson-esque crossover. And it was just like when I watched it, I think I texted Koken and I said, because he had mentioned something to me, earlier about McDavid. And I said, oh my God, that was spectacular. Like he really is He's completely different. And what you said about Ovechkin, I'll never forget the first time I saw him. It was like his rookie year, and I was doing the show with Rigo at the time, with Riggins, and we went out to the game, and I just said that's him because he's bigger and he skates much faster than anybody out here. All right, who do you like? Finish up with that. Who wins the Stanley Cup Finals?
You know what? I've been saying this for a year now, but I think this is really going to be the next few days is going to be when Florida, after 3 runs to final, is finally going to get kind of threadbare and run out of gas. I think I said at the beginning, at the outset, Edmonton in 7. I'm sticking with Edmonton in 7. I just think also just for the sake of McDavid's mental health, like he needs a championship, but kind of the way Obi needed that championship in 2018, and it'll be so good for the game. He's not the best interview, he's not the most charismatic guy in front of a camera, but just to be able to put on ESPN Sports Center, on Good Morning America, whatever, show people who maybe are just casual fans or not fans, this guy is special, this guy is different. To have him win a championship, I think would be good for the game.
Just out of curiosity, it's been forever since a Canadian team's won it, right? Montreal 93, is that what it is?
Yeah, that's right.
Will the other Canadian NHL cities be happy if Edmonton wins?
Yes. I think Calgary might be a little bit bitter because they're in the same province. But I think once the players have skated a lap with the Stanley Cup over their head, I think that country, they are so proud of their game. I mean, here in the States, our pastime is baseball. Our first love is football. Basketball and hockey are somewhere, after that. Hockey in Canada, I mean, it's all they talk about. If you've never been to Toronto, as soon as you get to the hotel room, you turn on the TV, it's just hockey. It's all they're talking about. The NFL scores on Sunday are like the way hockey gets treated on American sports television. It's another level. They take such pride in the fact that it's their game. And for the most part, even though the U.S. on an international scale has really closed the gap and maybe even eclipsed them, some would say, it's their game. And I think that country, you'd see 30 million some odd Canadians lose their minds if Edmonton could finally, bring the trophy home.
Thanks for doing this. Hope you're well. Talk to you soon.
Anytime, Kevin.
Tarek El-Bashir, everybody. Spencer Carberry, named NHL Coach of the Year. A multi-time All-Pro corner is just hitting the market. More on that next.
All right, the DC Defenders have won the XFL Conference Championship. They will play in the UFL Championship against the Michigan Panthers on Sunday. Oklahoma City, the Thunder, they show off their depth with a commanding 123-107 win over the Pacers to even the series. The Thunder had 5 players score 15 or more points. Nick Chubb is paying a visit to the Houston Texans to potentially join Joe Mixon in the backfield, and the Packers are releasing 2-time Pro Bowl cornerback Jaire Alexander. Carlos Alcaraz defeated Yannick Sinner in an epic French Open final that lasted just under 5.5 hours, the longest since 1982. The Nats, they fall 4-2 to the Rangers. They're off tonight. They'll take on the Mets tomorrow on 106.7 The Fan. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, and hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1 and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC Sports. And that is what's trending.
So, according to multiple reports, after 2 straight seasons with multiple injuries, the Packers are getting ready to release cornerback Jaire Alexander. The Packers apparently informed him early this morning that he would be released coming up right before their mini camp. He's been a great player for them, but, this is a very similar story to Marshon Lattimore. Multi-time Pro Bowler, multi-time All-Pro. But in the last 2 seasons, Alexander at age 26 and 27 has played a grand total of 14 games out of a potential 34 games. Look, last year he still, in just 7 games, led his team in interceptions and pass defenses, but he just hasn't been healthy enough. He was put on injured reserve final week of the season, had knee surgery on what was said to be a torn PCL. That came a year after shoulder and knee injuries, plus a 1-game suspension for conduct detrimental to the team. So back-to-back years, 7 games each year. And he still has, heading into this year, 2 years of a 4-year, $84 million contract extension, which made him in the moment the highest paid cornerback in the NFL. And the Packers, will pick up some salary cap space, certainly by releasing him close to $15 million, according to reports. But, man, doesn't that reek of Marshon Lattimore, multi-time Pro Bowler, just in recent years hasn't played enough games? They're basically the same age. They're basically, in many ways, the same size. They're both excellent cover corners. I think both of them at their best are elite level corners. But it certainly wouldn't surprise me if many of you out there would love Washington to take a run. Now, Lattimore required trade compensation. Alexander's going to require just somebody to pick him up along with what is left on his contract. Is there some case that could be made? Look, if you've got both of them on the roster, odds are one of them will be healthy each week. As long as they're both not injured and banged up at the same time. And as long as, these recent injuries aren't impacting their ability to play at the same levels that they've played at previously in their career. Alexander was outstanding in 2022. Played in 16 out of the 17 games, had 5 interceptions that particular year, made a second-team All-Pro, was a Pro Bowler, same way that just a few years back in 2021, Marshon Lattimore was a Pro Bowler after having an outstanding season. I don't know. To me, I think the one of the things that I've loved about both of these players is I view them both to be fearless as not only defenders but also tacklers. I think there are similarities between the two, and I would bet you that Washington's right now not interested. And if they were interested, wouldn't that say something about where they are with Lattimore right now? I don't think, and I've talked about this before as it relates to Lattimore, and I know some of you, have said this is going to be a bad look if it doesn't work out for Lattimore. Look, they won 12 games last year. They went to the NFC Championship game. They've got some leeway here. They're not going to hit on everything. They're not going to hit on every pick, and they're not going to nail every trade. Nobody really does. If the Lattimore trade ends up being a trade that they regret because they didn't get much from him, in their run through, what ended up being a deep run into the postseason last year, I don't think that they should be worried about cutting them loose and, looking bad for making the trade. You'd rather cut somebody loose sooner when it's not going to work. You cut it off and you move on. Trying to force square peg into round hole, if that's what you think he is now, doesn't make a lot of sense. And you've built up enough goodwill, I think, in this first 16 months of being a part of this organization to say, hey, we may have gotten that one wrong, but we're going to try to fix it sooner rather than later. I don't know if Alexander would be the answer, but I have a feeling many of you would be interested. Ben Standing will join us next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Over the past 3 seasons, his 91.5 overall grade ranks 5th among all quarterbacks. And then at number 6, Jaden Daniels. They write, perhaps we're crowning Daniels a bit too early, as plenty of quarterbacks have had standout rookie seasons, only to regress in year 2. But what separates Daniels is his poise under pressure and in clutch moments late in the year. His rookie campaign was arguably the best we've ever seen, with his 90.6 overall grade marking the highest ever recorded by PFF for a rookie quarterback. At 23, high after 1 year. I think he should be 5. I think it should be included in the elite category. I think the only 4, obviously, that anybody in this league, if you were running a team, that you would take in front of him, and there are even some debates there, Mahomes, Burrow, Jackson, Allen. After that, I'm sorry, there's nobody else of the projected 32 starters that if you were looking at a short window, long-term window, medium-term window, that you'd take in front of Jaden Daniels, including Jalen Hurts. 301-230-0980. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980 and the team980.com.
All right, the DC Defenders have won the XFL Conference Championship. They will play the Panthers, the Michigan Panthers, on Sunday. The Oklahoma City Thunder show off their depth with a commanding 123-107 lead over the Indiana Pacers to even the series. The Thunder had 5 players to score 15 or more points. Nick Chubb is signing a 1-year deal with the Houston Texans to team up with C.J. Stroud and Joe Mixon. The Packers are releasing 2-time Pro Bowl cornerback Jaire Alexander, and the Bengals are releasing veteran linebacker Jermaine Pratt. Carlos Alcaraz defeated Yannick Sinner in an epic French Open final that lasted 5.5 hours, the longest since 1982. And the Nats, they fall 4-2 to the Rangers. They are off tonight. They'll take on the Mets tomorrow on 106.7 The Fan. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, and hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1, and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that's what's trending.
Phone lines are open at 301-230-0980. PFF ranked Jaden Daniels the 6th best quarterback in the NFL last week or 2 weeks ago, something like that. Called him in the category of high-end starter, not elite. He's behind Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Jalen Hurts. Is that fair? Is that a fair spot for Jaden? 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. I know it's kind of crazy that we're talking about this after 1 year. We've been grappling with that, in this conversation now for, how many months? I mean, if we go back really 8 months, sometime in October, November of last year, it started to become apparent that not only had they gotten it right, they had hit a home run by drafting Jaden Daniels. This guy was winning games, strapping a team as a rookie quarterback to his back, overcoming the lack of, consistent defense, consistent run stopping ability, consistent running game on their own, a roster that was, fair to Midland, let's just say, around him, and yet they were able to win 12 games, many of them in walk-off or near walk-off fashion because of his play, and then win 2 impressive playoff games on the road before succumbing to a great team last year in the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC title game. I personally, have felt for months now, going back to certainly early November, there isn't anybody other than a couple of dudes that you'd put in front of him. And I think they got the right list: Mahomes, Burrow, Jackson, Allen, whatever order you want to put them in. But that's it for me. After that, it's Jaden. And Jaden's elite. He played at an elite level last year. I like Jalen Hurts. I'm a Jalen Hurts fan, and I have been since he started to play coming into the league. I think he's clutch. Big-time moments, he delivers. He's not Jaden Daniels as a runner, as a thrower, as a playmaker, and Jaden has what appears to be the same clutch gene that Jalen Hurts has. I wouldn't have Jalen anywhere near the top 5 personally. I'd still personally, if I were starting a team for, say, the next 2 to 3 years, it's not, I want to take kind of age out of it because I want to just talk about the best quarterbacks now. I think I'd still have Stafford instead of Hurts. I think I'd still have Herbert, and I know Herbert has not delivered in the clutch moments like Jalen has. That's true. I'm still enamored with Jordan Love's talent. Probably that's the list of guys that I might have in front of Hurts. But anyway, 301-230-0980 if you want to weigh in. We've got an open line. Is number 6 fair for Jaden Daniels in the PFF rankings? I say he should be at 5. Max, what do you think?
I'm in agreement that he should be 5. I've been doing this since the end of last year. I mean, it's very easy for me. Like it's the top 4, and then it's him, like you said. I can't. Yes, Jalen Hurts has done the clutch things in the playoffs, but at the same time, that team around him has lifted him to greater heights. And I think he's doing that on the backs of his teammates. Jaden Daniels is lifting his teammates up on his own. So that's I got to put Jaden at 5 ahead of Jalen Hurts, and much like you, I don't know if this is if my view of Jalen Hurts is skewed because I'm a Commanders fan, or if I think of Jalen Hurts in the right light, because he should be somewhere around 9 or 10. I think he should be under Herbert and Stafford, ahead of Goff on this list. So put him at the 8th slot, but 5 just seems and feels way too high. I feel like that's coming off of a Super Bowl. I feel like that's why he's where he is.
There are a couple. I mean, I love Mahomes. I love Burrow. I love Lamar. I like Josh. I love all those guys. I think, you could make a case that you'd want Jaden in front of Joe Burrow because of the injury factor. Lamar Jackson, he's missed games, has not played well in the postseason. I think those 2 guys, you could make a case for Jaden in front of either one of those 2. All right, let's get to the phone lines. 301-230-0980. PFF's rankings of the NFL's projected 32 starting quarterbacks entering 2025 has Jaden Daniels at number 6 behind Mahomes, Burrow, Jackson, Allen, and Hurts. Robert in Annapolis, go ahead.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for taking my call. Sure. Bill Parcells once used that expression with Tony Romo. Let's hold off on the anointing oils, which is essentially what you've done with Daniels. He certainly appears to be someone who's going to rise to the top or near the top, but you can't conclude that at this point in time. So, I think it's a fair spot. Certainly Mahomes is number 1. He's claimed that spot. And then you got the next 4, Lamar, Allen, Burrow, those 3. You can kind of debate the order you want to put those in. And I certainly put Hurts after them because of what he's accomplished. But that's the thing when you're rating quarterbacks. Are you rating them for what they've done, not for their whole career necessarily, but at least for the past 3, 4, 5 years, or what's ahead? Because if you're going to project ahead, then you arguably could put Daniels up maybe at the top. And you said they would trade him, Hurts. The Eagles would trade Hurts for Daniels. They very well might, but a lot of that has to do with the financial ramifications for the next 2 or 3 years. So
yeah, but you know what? Let's just say that they had comparable contract situations. Is there any doubt that if you were a team and you got to choose between Daniels and Hurts right now, would you really think that that's a debate?
I understand why you feel the way you feel because of what you saw, and you hate to do the schedule thing. But my Lord, you beat closely, won out several games against bad teams with bad quarterbacks. Let's see what happens now. Yep. They have a tougher schedule against better quarterbacks. That's the way it works. Aaron Rodgers was
played pretty well against Philly. Played pretty well against
I got all that.
against Tampa and Detroit in the postseason.
With half their defense missing, and the game they beat the Eagles in, Hurts wasn't in that game for the most part.
That's true.
But let's see how it pans out.
Doesn't play
defense.
Okay. Let's
he
see
doesn't
how
play
it pans
defense,
out
though. And Washington turned the ball over 5 times and still scored 36 points.
Okay.
Thank you, Robert.
I'm not trying.
Yeah, thank you as always. I want to get to a couple of more in here before we have to roll for the day. Billy and Chantilly, go ahead.
Kevin, I believe I was the first one to say this out loud. I'll say it again out loud. It's the time that for the Baltimore fans to evaluate whether or not the Lamar Jackson replacement of Flacco was the right move. I mean, it's time to start talking about that from a Baltimore fan perspective.
Lamar Jackson's a multi-time MVP.
I don't care. How many Super Bowls do you have? 0.
You should. And I loved Flacco and always felt like he was a bit underrated and a tremendous clutch quarterback in the postseason. But come on. The Ravens did not make a mistake moving on from Flacco and having Lamar Jackson be their starting quarterback.
To our friends in Baltimore, you'd have 3 more parades had they kept Flacco in quarterback. 3 more parades. Look, Jaden Daniels is number 1. I don't care about anybody else. I don't care what anybody says. This guy is the best rookie quarterback and going to be the second best quarterback probably in the history of the league. Okay, so what we're looking at here in the future, if they can keep him healthy, if Peters is able to get him a line that keeps him upright, we get a little bit of a running game, and if we get any deep, and by the way, I'm not sure that getting rid of Jeremy Chin was the best move. From a cultural perspective, obviously we'll find that out as the year progresses. We get half a defense, a decent line, and a decent running game. We'll probably win 6 Super Bowls with Jaden.
6 Super Bowls. Flacco would have won 3 more. He's already the best quarterback in the game. It's a good thing you're not prone to hyperbole. Good to have you again, Billy. Let's go to Bobby in North Carolina. Bobby, go ahead.
Hey, Kev. I got him ahead of Hurts, which makes him a top 5 quarterback, and I think that's pretty doggone good, buddy. The second-year quarterback, we got a top 5. So he's better than Hurts to me by far. But everything else is probably pretty much in line right now. But he's definitely if he has a year of maybe what we think he might have, he can maybe be number 2, number 3 in the league. So, but we can win, but it's all about defense. I've been preaching the whole off season. We'll have enough offense to, move the scoreboard a lot every single Sunday, but it's all about the defense. Well, can we get off the field?
Thanks, Bobby. Appreciate it. Hit him straight. Samaj, go ahead. Samaj, you there?
Yes.
Go ahead, man. You're on. What's up?
How you doing, Coach?
I'm good.
Thanks for taking my call as always, sir. Hey, man, I'm pretty solid with the list. I think it's pretty much semantics, flip-flopping any of them, including Mahomes as of last year, just last year alone. I think you could flip any one of them, 1 through 5, including Jaden at 5, in that order, flip them around. But one thing I do want to point out to you, just my personal opinion, I think you're looking at Jaden just a little bit too much through the Bergen Gold lens. That dude is spectacular, and I think what you're not giving enough credit for is that major intangible elephant in the room, which is his leadership. I don't think they would have accomplished half of what they've accomplished with not much any of the 5 quarterbacks in combination with that head coach. I think that team really, really focuses around Jalen, and I think that Super Bowl and the focus to obtain that championship, getting that chip, was mostly on his strength and his leadership. I just really believe that dude, from his days at Alabama all the way to now, his leadership
it's something else. And he's beloved there. He's beloved there. There's no doubt. And Samaj, I got to roll, man. Thanks for the call. I'm up against it.
A lot, buddy.
Hey, if you need new windows, please give Window Nation a call at 866-90-NATION. Go to windownation.com. You can do that too. Mention my name. They're going to come out and give you a free estimate. They'll be in and out of your home in an hour or less. You'll actually find out which windows need to be replaced. If you move forward with Window Nation right now, you're getting access to their semi-annual sale, which is 4 free windows with every 4 purchased opportunity, a free exit door when you purchase a house full of windows, and you don't have to pay anything for 2 full years. No money down, no payments, no interest charged. And you'll start paying for these windows in the year 2027, all the while saving big on heating bills and air conditioning bills. Their windows come with a lifetime warranty. You've got nothing to lose. Window Nation's buy 4, get 4 free. Don't pay anything until the year 2027 and get a free exterior door when you purchase a house full of windows. 866-90-NATION, windownation.com. All right, we're done for the day. Chris is up next.